When starting a business and really starting an online business, a lot of people's focus is always on getting to that six-figure level or that seven-figure level. But the mistake is that they're focusing on the income. I want income of 100,000 or I want income of seven figures. And a lot of people also think that because you have $1 million business or a multi-million dollar business, it automatically means that you're a millionaire. And that is so far from the truth. I can tell you right now that there are a lot of people with a seven-figure business that are not millionaires. And I think there's a big misconception about how to generate money, where wealth is built, how to become a millionaire. And what I want to do is I want to give you guys 6 lessons that I've learned that helped me stay out of debt, even though I've been in debt, how to get out of it, how to stay out of it, and also build huge worth. Yes, I have become a millionaire through the business, but I can tell you right now that most or a good portion of my net worth was not made from the business. It was made from investments that I did that the business allowed me to make. And that is one of the biggest financial lessons that I have learned and things that I want to share with you guys. And today's episode comes from a desire to teach you how to play the game. The school system and a lot of our parents are not teaching us how to survive in the world that we live in or the world that we're going to be having to live in or our kids are going to have to live in. You have to learn how to be able to play the game. You have to learn how to be able to have fun with it, but you also have to start learning things that they don't teach you in school. And so today's episode is dedicated to giving you 6 lessons I've learned to be able to become a millionaire. And not all of it, and a good portion of it, did not come from the business. So if that's intriguing to you, if you want to learn more, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today is an episode we're filming at night. So if you're watching on YouTube, I don't know if the lighting looks a little weird or whatever, but finally settled into our home, feeling more settled into our home anyways. And I don't know, I just been finding it really easy to just work at night lately. And before I had kids, night was always the time that I worked. Like I just would work till 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes, wake up at 10, and I always found that was my most creative time. So it's really cool being able to kind of hop back into nighttime episodes and creation time here. And so that's what we're doing tonight. And so I'm really excited for it. Today, the thing we're going to talk about in today's episode is about financial lessons that I've learned in owning a business. And this is a topic that's really important to me. One of the reasons why is because when your finances are in order, it actually relieves a lot of stress inside of your business. And when you have less stress, it becomes a lot easier for you to be able to navigate the business, make decisions that you need to make, to operate with more personal power. It allows a lot for you. It takes a big burden off your shoulders. I've read a lot of things about even just relationships, how one of the reasons most relationships will end in divorce or separation is because of money. And when we're operating a business, you have to understand that the livelihood of your business comes down to money, and it comes down to finances. And the problem is when we start to grow a business, the money's very slow usually. Sometimes we don't have any money coming in. Sometimes when the money comes in, it goes out just as fast as it came in. So there's a lot of things that we can do when it comes to financial things, like raise prices, check the profit margins. You can monitor how much something costs. And I think in the course-based business, I don't think enough people do that. I don't think enough people actually sit down and monitor what a program costs. And I think we get in this idea that because we're a digital business, we don't have to worry about the cost of the product. but you do. There's fulfillment that needs to happen. It's not like, in most cases, it's not like people just download it and go away, right? You have to fulfill on a lot of things. And I can't tell you how many times there have been people that come into our program, even though my program's about messaging. I do some minor goal setting and financial type of stuff inside the program. And the reason why we do it is because if you're constantly worried or stressed or concerned about the money, or you have a broken business model, it's going to take you away from the messaging. Like, you're not going to be able to have the space or the time or the energy or the personal power to find the message that you need and have to have inside of your business in order for it to grow if the finances are all out of whack. And so a lot of times we see people come into our program and they go, Brandon, I want to build $1 million business. And I say, that's amazing. Let's figure out the messaging. And then I'll ask them, but let's figure out what your dream is as well. Like, what is the dream business? Okay, you want to work 5 hours a day? Great. I love it. 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you want to have $1 million business. It's like, okay, cool. What's the course or what's the price of your program? $500. Okay, great. So that means we need to sell 2,000 units or whatever it may be. I don't. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here, which I think that may be right. 2,000 units. Yeah, I think it is right. 2,000 units. And I go, how much time does it take to fulfill on that order? And they go, well, Brandon, I have one-on-one calls, so it takes a lot of time. And I I'm like, okay, so if we did sell 2,000 units, would you even have enough time to fulfill on that? Like, would you be able to get it all done within the 5 hours that you have allotted yourself? And they're like, no. And I say, well, that's just fulfillment, let alone like the administration work that you have to do, taxes you have to do, the hiring you have to do, the posting you have to do. So you're already coming into this, even if you hit your financial goals, you don't even have the business set up in a place where it can even fulfill on everything that you're selling. So you have a broken business model. And I always tell people we want to get all of that stuff sorted before we get content going, messaging going, all of that stuff. Because if you start to sell and scale, but the business model is broken, you don't have the team or you don't have the support, or you have a broken pricing structure or a broken fulfillment structure, all of it starts to fall apart. And again, these are all lessons that I've learned along the way. These are all things that I've had to figure out on my own. And today in this episode, I wanted to share a lot of those lessons here with you, the financial lessons. Most of you guys know this, especially if you've been in my ecosystem for a while, but I've actually run into a lot of financial issues while starting the business. And I've made a lot of financial mistakes when running this business. You know, part of the reason is that the education system doesn't teach you anything about finances. It doesn't really teach you anything about how to manage your money, save your money, invest your money. It doesn't really talk about taxes at all. There's so much that you can learn when it comes to finances that they just don't teach you in school. I mean, honestly, everything you learn in finances has to be learned outside of school. And I think this is a great thing to start talking to your kids about, especially for me. Like, the name of the podcast is New Generation Entrepreneur. I talk to my kids about the finances. I talk to them about taxes. I break down what taxes are so they have an understanding of it. I talk about how we make money, what profit is. I talk to them about all of this stuff. And the education system doesn't talk about any of it. And they really kind of set us up just to be employees, which again is fine. But I also think that being an employee might become an outdated thing when our kids are heading into the job market. I think there'll be less jobs. I think more people are going to have to rely on how to make their own money. And if that's the case, well, then we should probably be teaching this stuff to our kids, because I didn't get this sort of education. I had to learn, quote unquote, the hard way, school of hard knocks. And there were times where, my business did $500,000 in revenue back in 2017. And then I found myself in $40,000 in debt 4 months later because I didn't manage. We'll talk about why a lot of that stuff happened, but I basically got hit with credit card bills, tax bills. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, so I didn't want to do it anymore. So I stopped selling, but I still had expenses and things caught up real fast, and I didn't really save any money. Plus I had a lot of expenses in the business as well. So I got myself into a lot of trouble. But now fast forward, that was 2017. 2 years later, 2019, we were able to buy our first house, or maybe it was 2020. No, it was 2019. We were able to buy our first house. And I did that a little bit differently. And, obviously but the housing market took off, and we had a bunch of equity in the house. We ended up selling it, moving it to Arizona, and made a bunch of money off of our house as well. And so what we've been able to do is start to learn how to make more money using the money of the business. And in fact, that's actually lesson number 1. Let's just hop right into lesson number 1. Is that, what I just talked about was lesson number 3, but let's hop into lesson number 1. Lesson number 1, one of the things I've had to learn in order to move my net worth up is focusing on income isn't profit. And that may seem very basic, and some of you might be rolling your eyes and like, Brandon, we get that. But a lot of you don't get that. And I didn't get that because I think we're so conditioned inside the space to be like, oh, I want a 6-figure business or I want a 7-figure business. Let me tell you right now, I was in for a rude awakening when I did 7 figures in revenue and I was barely making $100,000 myself a year because we were hiring, we were bringing on more people. They wanted to get paid more. We also had like clients coming in, clients leaving. I had an office. I had taxes. I had so much stuff to pay for that I was barely even making $100,000 a year myself when we hit like almost our first 7 figures. And so what I didn't realize is that I shouldn't be focusing so much on the income, but more on the profit or even just my own salary. And the reason why that's so important is because it moves the way you look at your business. It changes your perspective on the business. So if you're looking at how to increase your profit. So let's say, for example, you're like, okay, cool, Brandon, I'm making $100,000 a year in profit, but I want to make 200. My automatic, at least the way I look at it now, my automatic way of looking at it isn't necessarily how do I increase revenue. So if I want to increase profit, sometimes it could require you looking at your expenses, and maybe there's things you can cancel on your expenses. Or there's ways to change your offers around, right? So sometimes we can restructure offers so that we do make more sales, or we do make more profit, or we take things out of our offers that were really expensive. Maybe we were offering one-on-one calls, and that was really expensive because you had to hire coaches or someone else to do the one-on-one calls. And so when I focus on profit over revenue, and again, I'm not saying ignore revenue. Obviously, you want to pay attention to that as well. But when you do have some sort of focus on what the profit is and increasing profit, not necessarily revenue, well, then things start to change. And so right now inside of my business, we have multiple 7 figures, like roughly $2.5 million a year in revenue. But I'm aiming to get my profit up to 7 figures because our profit's not at 7 figures. It's high, like it's great. I'm not complaining, but we don't have 7 figures a year in profit. And so what I'm looking at is how do we get to 7 figures in profit? This also allows me to look at the most profitable products in the program. So where are we making most of our revenue? Where are we making most of our profit? Does it come from payment plans? Should we push payment plans? Does it come from pay in fulls? Is it on this product? Is it on this offer? And so we can really look at where does the majority of the profit come in. And so when we go to scale, we can focus more on pushing that product or that offer that we have going on there. Now, the thing is it also helps me focus on a be, do, have model. So instead of me going let me explain what the be, do, have model is for those of you who don't know. The be, do, have model is something that I learned from Jim Fortin. He's not the one who created it, but he's definitely the one who taught it to me and a lot of other people, and probably some of you guys listening to the podcast. And it is a model that pretty much leads to success because it changes the way you take actions or think about things. And Basically, how most people operate in life is that they do have, do, be, which means once I have the money, then I can run the Facebook ads and then I can have the $1 million business. But the be, do, have model is actually the more effective model, because instead of saying once I do this, then I can become this, we say I am going to be this now, which is going to allow me to take the actions I need to take. So instead of saying once I have the money, then I can run the Facebook ads, then I will be a millionaire. Instead, we're going to say I'm a millionaire first, and a millionaire makes these sorts of decisions. So I'm going to make these sorts of decisions and take these sorts of actions now. So instead of saying, well, once I have the money, then I can run the Facebook ads, it's more of I'm going to run the Facebook ads because I'm $1 million business, and that's what $1 million businesses do. So I'm going to go do that now. And you get resourceful and you figure out a way to make sure that the Facebook ads get run. Okay. And that's kind of how I live my life, is how do we want, or what is the goal that we want? We want to be a $10 million business. Great. What do $10 million business a year businesses do? And let's do that now, because actions produce results. Actions of a broke business produce a broke business, and actions of $1 million business produce $1 million businesses. But again, where my mind goes because of this first lesson is I want $1 million in profit. If I want $1 million in profit, what do those sorts of businesses look like? And maybe that doesn't mean getting to $10 million in revenue. Maybe it means just getting to $5 million in revenue, because we were able to do something else with our offers or profit margins or expenses or something along those lines. But in order to increase my income or profit, I try to live that be, do, have model. I look at, yeah, of course we need to increase our revenue, but what do businesses that have $1 million in profit a year, what do they do? How do they look? How are they structured? What actions are they taking? How do they get to $1 million in profit? And more specifically, I'm looking at like online businesses or businesses in my niche. Okay. So that's lesson number one, is to just understand that when you set your goals, make sure you're setting a profit in what you want to make as the goal, not necessarily the revenue of your business. And I know it's kind of cool and popularized inside the space to be like, oh, I have a 6-figure business. But I can tell you right now, like if you're doing 6 figures in revenue, you're lucky if you're even taking home 50,000. You're lucky if you're taking home 50,000. Like if that's your profit off 100,000, that's pretty dang good. So for me, I'm not focusing on that. And it's also really sexy to say that you have $1 million business. But in most cases, if you have $1 million business, you're lucky if you're bringing home yourself 200,000 a year. Like you're lucky if you're doing that. And so for me, is to realize that income isn't profit, and we do have to set goals for profit and what you want to take home as well. Okay, so that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, and this really helped me, but I realized that debt actually isn't that bad. And, you know, this comes with a disclaimer of like, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just sharing my own experience, and I do recommend talking to a CPA or talking to, a financial advisor or something along those lines. I'm just going to be sharing my own experience here. But when I was $40,000 in debt, I've probably felt like how most of anyone would feel when you're $40,000 in debt. It was scary. I felt like, I just had like a big boulder on my shoulders all the time. And I didn't know how we were going to get out of it. And I just had this pit in the bottom of my stomach, and it just felt awful. And I was just scared, and just had faith that like I was going to pull through. And I just knew in my gut and my feeling, probably like how a lot of you feel, that I was going to be successful. But in the moment, I wasn't feeling successful. And I was kind of like hoping that this idea would come that would pull me out of debt. And we found it. I found that, methodology. We created the video Forex effect, which is now New Generation Mastery. And we pulled ourselves out of it. But there was a realization I had while I was in debt for that 3 to 4 months. And it was completely how I reframed debt. And I just realized that a lot of my pain, a lot of the suffering, a lot of the anxiety that I had was because of how I labeled debt in my mind. And I labeled it as bad. You shouldn't have this. And because I lived in this reality or this world where I shouldn't have debt and this is bad and you can't be in this situation, I then suffered because of that, because I was like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't, whatever. And I was creating all of these labels, all of these expectations. My ego, my trawl was going crazy with this is wrong, this is bad. And I just realized like debt actually isn't bad. And people get out of debt all the time. In fact, what I realized is, you know what? There's people that start businesses every single day and they take out $100,000 business loan. And I asked myself, like, look, if your debt was a business loan, would you feel this bad? And the answer is no, I wouldn't have. The reason why I felt bad is because it was tax debt and credit card debt. But I realized, you know what? People start businesses all the time and put themselves in debt. In fact, people go to school and get a college degree that doesn't really help them at all in life. And they have to pay that off and they come out $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 in debt. So why are you worrying about $40,000 in debt right now? It makes absolutely no sense. And by living in this pain, living in this suffering, it's not going to help you get out of it. Be, do, have. If you want to get out of debt, then be someone now who doesn't have debt. What decisions do they make? How do they run their business? What are they doing? And there was a point where I was sitting down with my mentor, one of them, Jim Fortin, and we were in Sedona. And I remember this story to a T. We were at a little sandwich shop called Wildflower. And I don't even know if I told him that I was in debt, but he knew things weren't going well. And I was telling him about this idea that I had called the video Forex effect. And he goes, that's going to be your $1 million business. Do you believe that? And I said, yeah, 100%. I can feel it. And he said, well, where are you going to be a year from now? And I said, we're going to be $1 million business. And he said, do you believe that to be true? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that's what's going to happen. And he said, in order to get to that, what do you need to do now? And I said, I need to hire someone. I need to hire that integrator. And that's when I hired Taylor. But I didn't have the money to hire Taylor. And I told him, I don't have the money to hire Taylor. He goes, what would $1 million business do? And I said, they would hire Taylor. And he goes, so hire Taylor. So I hired Taylor. And that's what I did. And that is exactly what I needed to do to pull myself out of the debt. And so what we started to do is started to build. I had someone with me. I had someone running the business, the operations, the day-to-day. And we were able to build, over the next 4 years, a multi-million-dollar business. And it was all because I hired Taylor. And I did the things that I needed to do. But I wasn't in the fear of the debt. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. And because I wasn't afraid of it anymore, it allowed me to have that freedom or that personal power and just that energy and just the weight off of my shoulders to be able to make the decisions I needed to make. Now, I just want to be very clear. I'm not telling you guys to go put yourselves in the debt. I'm not telling you to put things on credit card. I'm not telling you to not pay your taxes. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm telling you my experience, and that is it. This is not financial advice. So, I don't need anyone coming to me and be like, Brandon, I put myself in the $50,000 in debt because you told me to. Not telling you guys to do that, all right? But I am sharing a lesson that I had to reframe debt, and that really helped me get out of debt. And so I actually did a whole episode on this that you guys can listen to on the podcast. Just go to the search and type in debt. And I did a whole episode on what I did, how I did it, how I reframed it and all that stuff. Some of the things, if I was in that spot again, what I would do differently is I probably would have consolidated that debt. So I could have gone and gotten like a business loan or a line of credit or something that had a lower interest rate. And I could have gotten a $50,000 business loan at a lower interest rate, and I probably could have used that money to pay off the debt. And now I have a lower, interest rate. Or sometimes you can consolidate credit cards. You can open up a new credit card, and that has like 0% API for 12 months, and you can transfer the line of credit or the credit that you have on these other credit cards to that credit card, and now you have basically interest-free loan payments, I guess, for 12 months. There's a lot of things that I could have done differently that I didn't know at the time to like help reduce the amount of payments. Because when you have credit card debt, it's actually really difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of money coming in to pay it off, because the interest is just so dang high on those things. So, obviously be careful and be smart about debt if you do have it. There's ways to consolidate. Be careful what kind of debt you have, because again, not all debt is created equally. But again, like when I go into a launch and we spend $200,000 on ads, I'm using debt. I'm not pulling out my own money and doing it, because heaven forbid I pull out $200,000 and the launch goes awry and now I used my own cash to do that. Well, guess what? I took $200,000 out of my bank account that I could have used for payroll, or I could have used for Facebook ads for another launch, or I could have used for whatever. Having cash on hand is one of the most important things in running a business. So if I did have a launch and it did $200,000 and I had $200,000 in credit card debt, I may pay some of it off, might figure out a plan, but I would probably consolidate it off of a high interest thing into something else. But it at least allows me some room and time to play around and figure a solution out while keeping and maintaining cash in my account. So that's kind of the lessons I've learned is how do we use debt? Also, side note, a lot of credit cards, especially with Chase, will give you 3 times the points if you use social media advertising. So if I spent $100,000, with Chase on a credit card, I get 300,000 points, which equates to $3,000 back in my pocket. Or sometimes they let you double your points if you use it for travel. So it could be $6,000 worth of travel. So you get free money if you do that. But learning how to reframe debt, look at debt, changed everything for me. How to use debt to make more money, it changed everything for me. So if you find yourselves in those scenarios where you are in debt, well, maybe giving it a reframe might allow you some breathing room, or just the acceptance that it's okay. And you can get yourself out of it. And it might give you that personal power back to be able to figure out the right move and what to do next. Because when we are heavy with anxiety and we're heavy with worry and we're heavy with shame, which are all things that I felt, you can't fly because you're weighted down by too much. You're too heavy. You can't fly. And sometimes reframing things allows you to become light, and it allows you to be free, and it allows you to have the clarity, the clear mind, the silence, and the personal power and the energy, because all that stuff is also zapping your energy, to figure out how to get yourself out of debt. And so those are all lessons that I had to learn. Number 3 is that for the longest time in running my business, I had the business and my personal income almost tied into one. Meaning that, I had personal accounts and things like that, but I wasn't really paying myself because I kept telling myself, well, the business needs it, the business needs it, the business needs it. And, I'd use the business to pay for rent at our house and other things. And there was very little, or if I took money out of the account, it was pretty much just enough to pay my personal bills and nothing was going into my personal savings. And that actually became a problem because I'm not building any personal wealth. I'm not building any personal savings account. I'm not investing anything. There's no retirement. And as an entrepreneur, we're responsible for our own retirement, and we're responsible for our own health benefits. We're responsible for all that stuff, and we need personal income to be able to pay for that. Even if it's just $500 a month, something should be, or whatever it may be, $100 a month, something should be leaving the business and going into your personal account. And your personal account should be the thing that's investing in other stuff, retirement, savings, stocks, gold, whatever it may be, whatever you guys want to invest in. But if you don't have any personal income moving over from the business, well, then you can't invest in anything. You don't have any savings account, and it's totally different. They're two separate things. And I treated them almost as one. And so it may seem like a very simple thing to kind of like realize, but it was something for me as we built the business. I kept saying cash needs to stay in the business, cash needs to stay in the business, cash needs to stay in the business. And it didn't really need to stay in the business. I just kind of like convinced myself of that. And what I started to do is to use the income in the business for our lifestyle is what I started to do. So we would make more money, which means our lifestyle would change. And one of the switches that we've made is actually that our investments now pay for our lifestyle. So when we sold our house and we made the money off of our house, that goes into my personal account. And that's allowed us things to buy like an Airbnb rental. And that Airbnb rental, let's just say it produces $4,000 a month. Well, now I have $4,000 a month that I can spend on lifestyle things if I wanted to, or I could reinvest it, but it doesn't take away from the main business, our main source of income. And this is something that I've learned from Mel Abraham, which is the business should be funding investments, and those investments then fund your lifestyle. But what a lot of people do is they start making money with the business and they make the business fund their lifestyle. And then you run into trouble because you didn't really save anything. You don't have any investments. You're not really protected that well. And you put yourself at risk because if anything goes wrong with the business, then your whole lifestyle is all messed up. And so you have to kind of treat them as two separate things. Number 4, the fourth one, and I want to be careful about how I talk about this. So number 4 is be strategic with taxes. This is also a huge one. And this is another thing that I learned from Mel, is the way I look at taxes now and the way I look at owning a business is that the everyday person who's an employee, they basically go into a job, they make their money, they're taxed, and then they get to spend what's left over. So again, I'm going to go through that order. They make their money, they get taxed on their money, and they can spend what's left over. This is how a business owner, this is how the 3 steps work for a business owner. They make their money, they spend their money, and they're taxed on what's left over. So if you're strategic with what you're doing, it's a much better process. And let me just give you an example here. You can, and by the way, for any tax advice, this is not me giving you tax advice. You do need to talk to a CPA or an accountant or something like that. I'm just sharing my experience and lessons that I've learned, but you still need to go to a professional with all of this stuff. But what I have learned is that like if you're spending $1,000 a month on groceries and because you have a big family or something like that, it's a huge expense for you guys. Why not start a business with putting YouTube videos up there, recording you making all of your food and things like that, and you're trying to build like a blog and maybe selling recipes or something like that. Even if you don't make any money with it, you now get to write off that $1,000 a month of groceries, as long as all of those groceries are being used in your filming of the business and your lessons and things like that. So what that means is you make your money that allows you to spend that $1,000 a month. You spend that $1,000 a month and you're taxed on what's left over. So now you have a $12,000 a year or $1,000 a month expense or write-off that you get to use. And if you're smart with what you're doing and you're starting businesses, you have to understand that businesses make their money, spend their money, and they're taxed on what's left over. And if there's nothing left over, then guess what? You don't owe any taxes. But if you're an employee is guaranteed to get taxed. If you're an employee somewhere, you are guaranteed to pay taxes. But as a business owner, the thing is things go bad in the business and you have a lot of write-offs or you have more expenses than you do revenue, you don't owe any taxes. But if you're an employee, you always owe taxes. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind, and you can be strategic with what you do. So for another example, if you work out of the house, you can write off a portion of your mortgage or rent. So if you're like, for example, if you're renting a house right now and you're running a business out of the house, and that room that you're using takes up 10% of the square footage of the house, you can write off 10% of your rent. As long as you don't have an office somewhere or something like that, your main office is in the house, you can write off your rent. You can write off part of your mortgage. You don't have to get taxed the same way as everyone else. So be strategic with what you're doing. Same thing with a car lease. If you have a car lease and you're going to go buy a car, as a business owner, it probably makes more sense to lease it because you can write off the lease as long as you're using it for business and things like that. So now you have a car, you don't have to pay the expense, the business is paying for it, and you get a write-off. And so there's a lot of ways to maneuver things around to maximize the amount of taxes you pay. So I'm going to run you through a little scenario that we're kind of thinking about right now. So as many of you guys know, we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona. Well, because the housing market was so crazy, we lost out on like 3 homes. So we put in offers, we lost out on like 3 homes. And so my wife and I are going like, man, the house is sold. What are we going to do? We need a place to go. So I said, let's just buy a smaller home. We will use it as an investment. It'll be an Airbnb, but we'll live in it until the bigger house or the dream house pops up. Maybe the market will come down and we can find a bigger house. Because when we tried to buy in March, it was like we put an offer on a house and it was like 10 offers, all cash, like 100,000 over asking. Like it was just getting ridiculous. So like, let's just go to the Airbnb. So now we're in our investment property. We're living here and we're kind of looking around, and this house is a little small for a family of 5 and smaller than what we're used to. And so, and I don't really want to go get an office or anything like that. So filming things is kind of hard because the house is kind of small. And so I just told her like, well, what if we went and rented a house? And let's just say we rented a bigger house and it would cost us $8,000. So I'm like, okay, that's an $8,000 expense. I'm going to use fake numbers here, but let's just say my mortgage right now on my investment property is $4,000. So right now I'm paying out of pocket $4,000. Okay. So right now I'm paying $4,000 on our mortgage every month. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. If I go get a house and rent a bigger house and it costs me, let's just call it $7,000 a month. And the normal employee would look at that and go like, well, Brandon, now you have $11,000 in just living expenses. Why would you do that? Well, here's why. If I move out of this house and let's just say I have a $4,000 mortgage, but I Airbnb it, it'll probably Airbnb in revenue $8,000 a month, which means I have cash flow now of $4,000 a month. So by moving out of this house, I actually produce $3,000 to $4,000 in cash flow, extra cash coming in. After the mortgage and expenses are all paid, $3,000 to $4,000 is probably what this house could bring in per month. And so I look at that and go, okay, great. So now if we move out of this house, not only will I be cash flowing $3,000 to $4,000 a month, I'll also be getting more equity in our home that I don't have to pay for. So my net worth is also going up. So when I move out of this house, this that we're living in right now, yeah, sure, like the mortgage is $4,000 a month. But if I move out of it and I rent it out, I have cash flow of $3,000 or $4,000, plus the money that we bring in also will pay for the mortgage, which means I am now increasing my net worth while increasing my cash flow. Yes, I'm going to have the expense of let's just call it a $7,000 rent. But if I can build a studio there or put a studio out there and it takes up 25% of the square footage of the home, well, guess what? I can now write off 25% of that rent. So by going and renting a $7,000 a month house, not only am I increasing my net worth, I'm also increasing my cash flow. The cash flow, let's just say, is $4,000 a month. Take that off of the $7,000 that my rent's going to be. My out of pocket now on my new rental is not really $7,000, it's $3,000, but then I can write off 25% of that $7,000 as well. So hopefully you guys are following along with all of that. And a lot of that are made up fake numbers, but this is what happens when you are a business owner or you have different investments and you take money and you invest it in other things. You have a lot more options to be able to save on taxes. And so not all of that was, obviously a tax situation, but if I did go and rent a house and I use 25% of the square footage for an office, I can write off 25% of that $7,000 a month. And by moving out of this home, I increase my net worth and $4,000 in cash flow. It actually is kind of a smarter, on paper, a smarter financial decision to move out of this house and go rent a house for $7,000 a month. Sounds crazy, but because of taxes, because we have other investments, because we were able to invest in this house, I might be better off financially by doing that. And if I was an employee, that might not necessarily be the case, because I might not be able to have that 25% write off. But the reason why I tell you guys this is you have to be strategic with what you do. And if we're able to follow the first 4 lessons that I had here, is that like debt isn't always bad, that the income from the business should pay for investments in other things, and we use those investments to pay for our net worth. We understand that as business owners, we can have write-offs and things like that. We can start to be very strategic with how we use our money, spend our money, maneuver our money around to maximize tax benefits and all sorts of things. Let's move on to lesson number 5, which is another thing that I've learned, which is that a lot, and this comes from Mel Abraham, a lot of what we do now and the way I like to invest and the things that I do with my money is it all stems from habits. And so this is one of the things that I talked with Mel about. One of the reasons why I got in trouble is that I didn't have habits. And so even if I only, tucked away $50 a month, that starts to help because it starts to help the habit. And if I know, for example, that I'm going to be putting away, let's just call it $2,000 a month in the stock market, $2,000 a month in a mutual fund, and $2,000 a month in whatever, and it could be whatever, $200 a month, not doesn't have to be 2,000, but I know those are coming up. It actually mentally prepares me to not spend money. So I might be going to the end of the month and going like, oh, I kind of want to buy this one thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but you have like $6,000 worth of investments you got to do, because that's just the habit. That's just the way it is. It's non-negotiable. That's what you're going to do. It actually helps me cut back on expenses as well. So now I can start to move money around, save money. But because I have the habits built up, it actually helps with the expenses, and they become non-negotiables. Every month, this is what's happening. And what we've been able to accomplish since 2017, when we were $40,000 in debt, to what we have today is remarkable because of the habits. I have habits where things get invested in, things get saved, things get tucked away, things get maneuvered away, where we have multiple things in multiple areas. And we do that to kind of protect ourselves, which again is something that we learned from Mel. Not saying that I did this, but just as an example, you could invest, and again, it's not financial advice, it's just a pure example. You could invest in like cryptocurrency, mutual funds, stock market, and gold. Typically what happens is that when like the stock market crashes, gold prices will go up. Or if crypto goes down, gold goes up. Or if gold goes down, the stock market goes up. And so we kind of insulate ourselves by investing in different things. So it kind of takes away the ebbs and the flow a little bit. If one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. But over time, they hopefully will all go up. And so the way we've structured a lot of stuff in our business is, or in our personal life is like, yeah, we can invest in real estate. We can invest in the stock market. We can invest in gold. We can invest in mutual funds. We can invest in whatever it may be. And we actually invest in several different things. And you can do the same thing. Like, you don't need to have a 7-figure business to do any of this. It is literally about developing the habit. Even if it's $5 a month and you're going to put stuff into savings, into the stock market, whatever it may be, great. $20 a month, you can invest in 4 things, $5 a month each. And over time, all of this stuff starts to add up. It's like a snowball at the top of the mountain. It gets bigger and faster as it goes down the mountain. But these are all things that you have to start doing now. So everything that I talked about today, everything from knowing that income isn't profit and you should be focusing on profit, that's a habit. Focusing on your profit is a habit. Focusing on other investments and educating yourself on how you want to do your investments, or getting in with mentors or learning from other people, that's a habit. I didn't know any of this stuff. Everything that I walked you guys through today, I didn't know when I left high school. I didn't know it when I left college. I didn't even know it when I started my business. I only learned it back in 2017 when I found myself $40,000 in debt, and I'm giving it to you guys now for free. I'm like telling you this is what I would be doing again if I was in your shoes, starting all over again. Learn this stuff. But even though learning is a habit, so keep that in mind. And number 6 is you have to understand no matter how good things are, bad days are going to happen. Bad launches are going to happen. Bad funnels are going to happen. Nothing lasts forever. You may have a really good offer right now, and that offer will run its course, and you're eventually going to have to pivot, and that who knows how long that pivot's going to take. But I can tell you right now, after going through several pivots, it is a hell of a lot easier going through a pivot when you personally have your finances in order. When you personally have a savings account, you have an income property, you have money in stocks, dividends, whatever, it becomes a lot easier to maneuver pivots. And look, if you're building your business, I don't expect you to have a huge savings, and I don't expect you to have all those things. I'm just saying, as you start to spend the money, it is time to build those things. It's not time for you. And again, I made these mistakes. I bought a $100,000 car. I did all of this stuff, and I kind of like kicking myself for it because I'm looking at how much all that stuff would be worth today. And, treat yourself, like go spend the money. It's not about just saving and saving and saving. It's about actually living a life as well, but just maintaining those habits to make sure that you guys are safe, because bad days will happen. And the more you save in the business, the more you save personally, the better. And one of the things that I've always done is, Mel calls it leapfrog investing, where it's like, if we have a really good launch, cool, I'm going to like give myself a little bonus, and I'm not even going to see it or spend it. It's just going away into an account somewhere, or it's going into like our investment account for real estate, or our savings account. It's going somewhere. And I do that on top of my monthly things that I do. Again, it's all about habits, and you just start to build and stack and build and stack. And the amazing thing is the more you build and the more you stack, the more you have available for opportunities, the more you have available to grow. And once, like for example, if you put it into a house and the house goes up and you have equity in the house, now you can use the equity to now invest in something else without having to save up more money. You let the equity work for you. Same thing with stocks. So it all starts stacking, and you can use it to start to multiply. And this is where we start to get into like real wealth. This is where we start to move away from the business being our source of income, and we have a wealth machine set up. This is where we start to, be safe if the business fails or goes through a hard time or whatever it may be. This is where we get safe if we get sick and we can't work, like what happened with Mel. So those are my 6 lessons. Again, let me just repeat them. Remember that income isn't profit. Remember that income in the business shouldn't necessarily be to support your lifestyle. It should be to invest, and the investments can support your lifestyle. Make sure that business and personal stuff is set up differently, separately. Debt isn't always bad. And if you do have debt, sometimes reframing it will free you up to make the decisions and operate the way you need to get out of it. Be strategic with what you do, and be strategic with taxes. And I would definitely consult with CPAs and accountants, like even quarterly. Go in and be like, here's my situation this quarter. And they can tell you, maybe we should do this. Maybe you should spend money here. Maybe you should not spend money here. Maybe you should do an IRA, or, whatever it may be. There's different IRAs you can do as business owners as well. Different things you can offer your employees, all sorts of stuff. Number 5, make sure you build your habits. And number 6, understand that bad days will happen, bad launches will happen, and saving and getting into the habit of investing and saving and having things semi-liquid could be good in case those situations come up. Now, you heard me reference Mel a few times. I believe this episode is coming out while Mel has his program open, and we will have the links in the show notes as well. But you can also go to brandonlucero.com/Mel to learn more about his program and his trainings on how to set all of this stuff up. because he really was the mentor to me back in 2017 that helped me get out of that situation, but build what we have today. And so whether you watch him or not and get in his program or not, the thing that I want you guys to understand is that the goal here is to have the habits and to realize that the business shouldn't support your lifestyle. The business should support giving you the money to make other investments, and those investments should support your lifestyle. And that's the ultimate goal. Like, obviously, the business is going to have to do it for a while when you're first starting out, but over time, we should be focusing on investments, and investments will pay for the lifestyle. Okay. So that's this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a review on iTunes and let me know. And if you want more episodes like this, just let us know. I try to just share the wisdom, share the stuff that I'm learning with all of you guys, because I dropped out of college. I don't have a degree. I'm never going to go get a degree. I don't think people really need a degree to be successful. I think you just need to learn how the game works. I think you need to learn how the system works. They're not going to teach you how the system works in school. And that's what I've been doing over the last couple of years, is just learn how to play the game, learning how to be successful. And they're not going to teach that to you in school. And I want to teach you guys what I'm learning so that you could hopefully walk a very similar path. So if you loved it, let us know. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.